Hi, everyone. This is Katie Parrish. I am with Region 6 Central Shenandoah Area Adult Education Program, and I'm here to just talk about our IELCE IET programs. We basically use two programs or two clusters, the healthcare and the manufacturing cluster in our partnering in this is Massanutten Technical Center, and this is a great partnership for us because our local coordinator there is actually the one who also oversees the adult continuing education program. So she's the one that schedules the welding classes, the DCA classes, the CNA classes, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's been really nice having that partnership. It's also been a great advantage for them because years when we've had extra money that needed to get spent, we were able to buy some extra welding machines that allowed us to move the class size from 10 to 15. And so it's been a partnership that's been beneficial to adult ed as well as the technical center. To go into a little more detail about the two different clusters that we have, here is kind of the data we have for the healthcare. We do a direct care assistance class and a CNA class. Now this is set up as a career pathway program. So that direct care assistance class does not result in an industry recognized credential. It basically puts that cohort of students on the pathway to then enroll into the CNA class. We structured it this way mainly because just from past history, whenever we would have an English language learner enroll directly into the CNA class, they would pass the CNA class, but they actually would not pass the credential. So we decided maybe putting it more on a pathway where they kind of did the direct care assistance program first, we might see an increase in those that actually pass the CNA credential. And you can see there with the data that first year when they took the CNA class, 88% passed the credential, so that 7 out of 8 that took it. The second year, 71%, so 5 out of the 7. And then this year, we obviously had the COVID kind of come in and play havoc because they basically finished the course right when that hit, but they had not signed up to take the exams. They have now gone ahead and done that. We had one student take it in August and he passed. And then we have 4 more that are set to take it next week. So we'll be able to learn whether or not they did. And with this gap between finishing the class back in March and actually taking the test here in September, we decided we would go ahead and do kind of like a review type of course form that was going on July and August and a little bit into September so that they feel prepared to take the test next week. You can kind of see our numbers here, our post-test and our EFL gains, are really strong. And I think a huge part of that is because the students are not only enrolled in the, DCA and the CNA course, but they're also, enrolled, of course, in our adult ed part of that where they're, learning the healthcare vocabulary and the math and all of that. But they are also enrolled in just another type of course in our adult education program. It could be a GED class, a pre-GED class. It could just be a ESL class that they're dual enrolled in. And so as a result of that, they're getting a lot of hours, hence why they're all getting post-tested and making significant gains. Now, you'll also see sometimes the enrollment, if you look at the enrollment number there, where we had 17 and then only 10 of them moved on to the CNA in that first cohort. And then the second cohort, we had 12 and it dropped down to 7 that moved on to the CNA. And so there are various reasons to why a student may not have continued on with the CNA. They may have gotten into the DCA class and said, this really isn't for me. It's not what I thought. And so they, went ahead and dropped out after that. It may also have come down to where the instructor didn't feel like they were really right for the program. Maybe their English level wasn't quite there yet. We had originally, that first cohort had talked about creating a direct care assistance 2 class for some of those students that the instructor felt like weren't quite ready to go into CNA. And there were probably about 4 or 5 of those. And unfortunately, those students weren't interested in continuing. So we ended up not doing that direct care assistance, but one of them did move on to the CNA class because they were really interested. And out of the 7 out of the 8 that took the credential for the CNA, that one that did not pass was actually the one the instructor did not recommend. So that is pretty much our healthcare program. Moving on to the manufacturing, again, we kind of split this up into 2 classes. We have a welding 1 and a welding 2. And that first year we had a lot of interest because you can see where we had 20 enrolled. So we actually had 2 separate classes. So 2 classes of 10. And, you know, all of them finished the class. And again, that first year, that welding 1, there is not a credential that they can earn, but they all earn the Massanutten Technical Center certificate. And then you can see out of the 7 that moved on to the welding 2, it's a pretty big drop when you had 20 in welding 1 and only 7 moved on to the welding 2. And again, some of that was they just didn't have the necessarily skills to go into the welding 2, or maybe their English wasn't high enough, or again, they weren't as interested in it as they thought. But I think another factor in that is you'll notice the welding 1 was actually in the spring of 2008, and then the welding 2 didn't actually start until the fall. So you had that summer gap where they were not in class rather than it going continuously right into, you know, fall, you know, finishing up right before Christmas and then starting welding 2 right after Christmas. So we tried to make a shift in doing that. And so the following year, cohort 2, you see 2 welding 2 classes, 1 in the spring and then 1 in the fall. And then the welding 2 didn't actually occur until this spring. So we combined those 2 classes into 1. And then we kind of, that way we're now on track to have that fall, spring, back-to-back welding 1, welding 2, and hope to see a little bit better retention. Again, you'll see the post-test numbers are pretty strong and the EFL gains. And again, I think a lot of that is because they're dual enrolled again in a pre-GED, GED, or ESL class. The, you know, credentialing here, they've done fairly well. 5 out of 7 that first year. And then this year so far, we did 9 out of the 15, but the 15 that finished the course, only 10 of them actually moved on to take the actual credential, submitted their welds for that credential. And so out of that, 9 out of 10 actually earned their credential that submitted. We have had where some of them have submitted and it came back as not passing, but it was just minimal things that needed. And so we've done a refresher or a remedial course for them so that they could resubmit a second time. And that this last round out of the 10, 8 of the 10 passed on the first attempt, and then we had 2 that did not. And so they did kind of a remedial tutor with the welding instructor and then resubmitted. And then another one did pass to make it 9 out of the 10. And the one that did not actually has a vision problem. And the instructor thinks that's probably a big part of why he's not passing is because of that disability. The employment numbers, you know, they look pretty good on the welding side, mainly because these individuals are coming into the class already employed, and they're just, and oftentimes their employment is already in a manufacturing and welding career, and they're just trying to bump up their skills. And so because they're coming in already employed, it's easy for us to track it. On the healthcare side, you can see our employment numbers are a lot lower. And a lot of this is because this tends to be more of our women ESL population, and they are coming in without employment. And so we're trying to track this through follow-ups with them through text messages, Facebook, any of that type of outreach. And we don't always hear back. And so we don't really know if they are working or if they aren't working, because we're not getting the responses always. So you can kind of see the numbers are a lot lower on this side of things. For this year, our IET plan is still, the same. We're hoping to do a fall DCA and a fall welding 1, and then in the spring, move that cohort into the CNA and the welding 2. The plan is still to go ahead and do face-to-face right now. But if something changes and we have to move to a virtual, the DCA curriculum is probably doable virtually. And the welding 1, as you can imagine, that is so hands-on, that's going to be really difficult for us to do that through a virtual option. So we're looking at maybe doing OSHA 10 if that ends up being the case. And then hopefully by the spring, everything will be a little bit more normal and we can get back to doing the face-to-face if we end up having to stop. Because again, the CNA and the welding 2 are both very hands-on and would be a lot harder to do through a virtual setting. So that is where we are now, and are the programs that we have for our IELCE grant. And feel free, if you have questions, to reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer anything that I can. Thank you.